Hello, Dad. This is Jay Warren. This is the Dadhood Journey podcast, and today's topic is this: complete meltdown. Let's do it.
Hi, my name's Nico, and you're listening to my dad, Jay Warren. This is the Dadhood Journey podcast. Thanks for listening. Pretty good. Now can we listen to it?
Yep. All right, Dad. So I am driving to work. I just left the house. Grandma came to watch Nico this morning. We'll have office hours this morning. And this morning, Nico had a complete meltdown. Like crazy meltdown that honestly I haven't seen in him in a long time. Like it was like 15-20 minutes of crying, inconsolable, nothing was working, just sobbing and so upset, and nothing was helping. And I'm really, really grateful that hasn't happened in a long time. As I've talked about in other episodes, like there's phases and growth spurts and things where things get wonky, and he's gone through periods like that where there have been those kind of just meltdowns where you just kind of looking at him and be like, what is going on with you? Like nothing's working. It's not hunger, it's not tiredness, it's just life. I don't know. Anyway, so this morning was one of those mornings. And again, grateful that they are few and far between now, or have been. I got to put it out there that, you know, maybe another phase is coming, or a phase will come at some point where there's more of that. But this morning really was a good example of like how much we've learned as parents in that situation to help him through it rather than trying to control it. And I'll just share with you here a couple of things that was working, not working. So if this is happening with you, and you haven't heard this or haven't tried it, or tried it and it didn't work before, you might put it back in the mix and see if it changes things up. So, I mean, obviously with a meltdown, it's best to avert it, right? If you can see it starting to brew, jump in and either solve the issue, whether it's like, all right, let's make sure you get fed, or, you know, let's get you out of this like boring situation and just amuse you and divert in that kind of way, or whatever it might be, right? So avoiding it or making sure before the meltdown's triggered by something, some emotional upset, by solving the upset before it actually blows up into a full-down meltdown. But you can't always do that, right? Because they happen. So when he was doing this, let me just tell you the story of what set him off. So it's getting close to Halloween time. We were doing Halloween decorations all this week. This morning when he woke up, he wanted to go right to making more little art Halloween things for the front porch. Yesterday, he and his mom made all these bats and ghosts and spiders out of paper, heavy paper that he watercolored, and then they cut them out and they're hanging them from the front door, so it's all spooky, right? And he wanted to do more of that. So cool, that's perfect. I go to shower. No, I actually went to take the dog for a walk, and he's watercoloring. And apparently, I wasn't there, he wanted to turn on the fan on high in order to dry the art pieces, which, not a big deal, right? One big deal is turns them on high and he puts it in front of them. They're going to blow all over the place. And the watercolor, which is black because it's bats and spiders and all that kind of stuff, is going to go all over the chairs and the counter and all that kind of stuff. But we could have managed that with the whole thing. But the thing that changed it up is Effie this morning woke up with like pretty bad headache, borderline migraine, did an adjustment trying to help her, but you know, she did not want the fan on high because it was going to like make her head hurt. So she said, like, you can turn it on low, we just can't have it on high, it's too loud, like mommy's head's going to hurt if we do it. He wasn't having that, and that's what set him off. And he was just crying like, nobody listens to me. Why won't you, like, let me put it on high? Like, it'll dry on low. No, it won't. You know, so it was it was obviously not logical, right? So that's the trigger, and I'm sure you can feel me, Dad. Like, there's plenty of times where those, meltdowns are happening, and your spouse comes in or somebody else comes in. I'm like, what happened? And you explain what triggered them to be so upset, and you just have to kind of describe that and look at them and shrug your shoulders. Like, yeah, so it's because he wanted the fan on high, and he can have it on low, but it's just not happening. So I walk in from the walk, and he's on the ground just flopping around, like crying. He wasn't throwing anything, and that's the hardest part, I think, with meltdowns is, like, if he starts getting frustrated and throwing things just to either get more of a rise out of us, or sometimes he does that when we're letting him alone and letting him be with it. Like, if he was on the bed and he's like flopping around, and then finally we're like, all right, so we're here for you if you need us. Let us know when you're ready for a hug. If you need anything, like, we're okay. But basically kind of nicely saying, like, we're here for you, but, like, we're going to let you do your thing on your own, which is the major helpful strategy, Dad, to do it. Like, they need to express that emotion and get it out of their system, and then once they're out of the system, like, it comes back down, and they'll get, like, either super huggy or just move on to the next, like it never happened, right? So that's what we were doing, and he's on the bed, so everything's fine. But then he started, like, throwing the pillows and getting the blankets off, and I honestly think he's doing that not to be destructive, not to be manipulative or anything like that. It's more so of, like, one, he's trying to burn out more energy, but it also brings us back into the room because we got to make sure he doesn't break anything or hurt himself, right? So that, to me, is another kind of cry for help, not pun intended, it's a gesture of, like, I want you to be here with me through this. And so you go back in and you make sure, like, hey, like, you can be upset, but you can't throw things. I don't want you to get hurt. I don't want you to break things there. And then thankfully, Nico settles down with that. If your kid doesn't, that's a whole other problem. But it is, like, kind of gently talking to him, saying, you're okay, we're here for you, which is really hard to do when your kiddo's freaking out, and especially if your head's hurting from having a headache, possible migraine, to be in that space of, instead of just like, oh my gosh, will you just get over it? Like, and there's also the other part of solving the problem is letting him turn the fan on high, right? Which, in the big scheme of things, no big deal. In the small scheme of things, not so big a deal, but it is kind of precedent setting, right? So as a parent, you're trying to, like, make sure, you hold the line and like, all right, these are the boundaries and this is what I said, and you're not caving all the time, because if you cave all the time, then the kid will just keep throwing meltdowns because they have learned that if they go long enough, you'll give them what they want, even though you said no. And then you as a parent are screwed, because then you've went through, say, 5 minutes of meltdown, and then they got what they wanted. So the next time, if you try and go 10 minutes and you just cave and you give them what they want, then you have 10 minutes of upset that isn't really going to the other end, right? So for Nico in this time, it going as long as it did was really unusual. But at the end of the 15 minutes, like, he had burned out all of that, like, stress and worry or whatever it was in his system. It wasn't about the fan. It wasn't about, really not even, like, not getting his way when it comes down to it. I think there's just these emotions that get bottled up in kiddos, and whether it's, like, feeling overly tired, not know what to do with it, or hungry, or emotional upset, it just gets built up, and that's their way of releasing it. Like, for us as adults, hopefully we've learned other tools to release that, either talking it out or going to the gym or whatever it might be to burn that out. But the kiddos, that's how they do it in these meltdowns. So in that time, what I've learned, what doesn't work is, talking to them like, hey, you need to be quiet, like it's too loud, or hey, like settle down, like you're misbehaving, or just kind of telling them that they're like wrong by things, which is easy to jump into when you're super upset because you don't want to be dealing with the meltdown, right? Another thing that really doesn't work is seeing the behavior and the crying as like acting out or misbehaving, and then essentially doing some sort of discipline or punishment for that behavior, right? Like, so like if you don't calm down, like you're going to have a timeout or something like that, right? Because it's not that they're misbehaving, it's that they're really upset and need connection and need love and need safety, or they need all of that in the time that they're trying to burn it out of their systems, right? So that's my take on it. I don't think it's really not about the fan being on high or whatever the like trigger point was that set it off into things. I think it's an emotional outburst that needs to be processed through with a loving, caring, supportive parent to let them go through it. And if they're allowed to go through it, one, they burn it out, but they also on the other end of it know, okay, mom or dad are there for me. Like I'm safe, I'm secure. They'll let me be who I am, and I'm free to express myself. And maybe I was going to say, and because they're able to do that, they're going to have those kind of outbursts less type of thing. I know in the books I've read and people I've talked to that they say that that's true, and it was this kind of philosophical land, theoretical land. But, I stopped myself for a second. I'm like, oh, I guess like we've been doing that like through those periods before, like last year and beforehand. And I started this by saying like, thankfully it's few and far between. So maybe it did work, that what we did before, that he doesn't melt down as much because of that safety and security and the supporting him through it. So all these little things that we go through are, kind of whispers of that whole storm. I don't know. I hadn't thought about that until just now. Like maybe it did work. So instead of trying to control and direct and stop and make the outburst stop just by distracting or anything, like if you can be in the space of supporting your kiddo through it, it can really help their emotional health, I think, from everything that I've read. And now, as I just realized by doing this episode, that it's working for our child in real time. So hope that helps. Hope any of those little tidbits are in the back of your mind sometime the next time your kid melts down and helps you. So let me know if it does. Until the next episode, guys, take good care of yourself, take good care of your families, and we'll connect on the next episode.
I hope you enjoyed that episode. You can hang out with other dads in our Facebook group. Just go to Facebook, search for the Dadhood Journey, and apply to get in. See you there, and see you on the next episode. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Perfect.
There you go, Dan.